Thank you, Michael, for the invitation. I'm pleased to be here because it is a big deal for me celebrating the Lunar New Year. I wanted just to say a few things about the Lunar New Year and the dragon, because that's a year of the dragon this year. Talking about Lunar New Year, it's really a study of diversity that we are all working on. But the Lunar New Year is being celebrated by billions of people, population in the world. So it's, but also it's very diverse, because of the vast population. So I just thought I'll say a few words about it. Essentially, the Lunar New Year, lunar calendar, there are two kinds. One is lunar. It goes by the phases of the moon, like from crescent to full moon. And the other is called lunisolar. It's lunar moon phases plus the sun, the position of the sun. So the calendars vary accordingly. So that's the basic differences, but there are so many varieties. And interesting thing is the lunar calendar only go by the sun, by the moon, is observed by the Islamic cultures. And whereas most of the other who go by the lunar, like Chinese, Jewish, Hindu cultures, they go by the moon and the sun combined, the kind of calendar. So this is interesting, I thought. In Asia, where I'm from, there are so many varieties, even just by the two different calendars. So we need to be very careful because some, like Korea and Vietnam, they celebrate like the Chinese around this time of the year. But many other countries like Burma, Cambodia, Laos, Sri Lanka, and Thai, they celebrate it according to the Buddhist calendar. And in Japan, they go by the Gregorian Western calendar. So we have to see that, it's such diversity. And just a few words about the dragon. We know that we have 12 animals in the zodiac. And then besides that, we have 5 elements. What are the elements? Is the metal, fire, water, earth, wood. Okay, so there are 12 of the animals and 5 of the elements. So they all pair. So you can see they cannot pair. This is why 5, this is. Okay, so they are 12 and 5. So they pair. So then you know how it is. They cannot fit into each other. So it takes about 60 years, 60 times. And then once 60 times is finished, that finished one cycle. And then we start all over again. So this is kind of, wow, thank you. Okay, so this year is the dragon and wood. So dragon, like all of us, have multifaceted personalities. In the West here, it's more portrayed as a symbol of fiercefulness, dominance, and ambition. But in the East, we tend to see their more benevolent side, wisdom, courage, protection, a symbol of strength and good luck. So, and the wood combination part brings in creativity, flexibility, and growth. So that this coming year is a combination of both. So this author says, this year it requires us to be brave, confident, proactive, and also prudent and collaborative. So this is kind of fortune telling from this Chinese zodiac author. And just the last point, the Chinese New Year, we celebrate for 15 days. Today is the second day. Yeah, today the second day. You have 15, altogether 15 days. And what we do to each other very often is we do this. We hold 2 hands together And we say 恭喜,恭喜. That means blessing and all the good wishes. And we not only doing that to the family, friends, but also strangers on the street. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Meja. So this is a forum on discussing the Congregational Identity Task Force report, Rethinking Our Identity as Vancouver Unitarians. And of course, the authors are Leslie, Rob, Marg, and Naomi Taylor and John Boyle. John was around. And Naomi, I don't think is here today. And so this forum is part of the preparation for the March 9th congregational retreat. And the theme is sort of the three questions. Who are we? Where did we come from? And where are we going? And this is really part of, it's an outgrowth of the interim ministry. Two things, an outgrowth of the interim ministry and the fact that even before the interim ministry, the board decided that it would change from a kind of micromanagement sort of day-to-day sort of board to a strategic board looking forward for sort of more important questions about policies, procedures, and looking at our vision. Where are we going? And so that's the important part. And this is sort of a prelude to it. And the interim ministry and the ministerial transition team sort of had 5 goals. There was our history, our identity, our looking at leadership, renewing and reviewing connections, and then, of course, renewing our vision. And this part really is sort of looking closely in a positive way at our identity. And so I hand this over to Leslie and Rob.
Opening words while we're lighting the chalice. I'm Leslie Hill. This is Mark Fletcher. This is a poem by Mary Gregolia, Becoming. We are who we are becoming. We are all we have been. We are what we are dreaming. We have only just begun.
Thanks, Marg. So I'm Rob Dano. I'm part of the Congregational Identity team and one of the people who worked on writing the report. And so I want to welcome everybody to this forum. I want to introduce you to the identity project we completed in 2021 as part of the ministerial transition team. Christian, can I get the first slide up, please? There we go. Sorry, thanks, Mary. So I want to give you a brief overview of how we approached this task, what we did, and what we found out. It's all explained in some detail in our Rethinking Our Identity report, and I hope some of you have already learned this information from there. We'll then talk about what we found out. So if I can get that slide back up. That's the one. So the appreciative inquiry approach we followed is a well-established research method. We chose it because it focuses on positive experiences as a foundation for building a positive and more powerful future. The thought-provoking questions were the stimulus to get people thinking, writing, and talking together. How many of you here filled out those thought-provoking questions back in 2021? Great, okay. So it looks like most of you did, which is excellent. And you might find it interesting to reflect on how we would answer those questions differently and also in the same way today, 2 years later. We worked very hard to get the message out and engage as many people as possible in this review. So we collected input from 45% of our 291 members. Most of this input came from the Rethinking Our Identity workshops, where participants discussed the thought-provoking questions and looked for common themes. Some workshop groups talked about their aspirations for this community. So we received an enormous amount of data from people. I mean, if you think about it, we got written responses to 9 thought-provoking questions from each of over 120 people. That's more than 1,000 written responses. We had to read and characterize and make sense of all of that. And it was, as you can imagine, a ton of work. But it ended up being satisfying when we found that most of what people told us fit easily into this model that we created for the Vancouver Unitarians. So that's a quick overview of what we did and how we did it. We'll now give you a flavor, we hope, for each of the main themes of our model by sharing with you a few quotes of what people told us.
So the first theme that we're talking about, community, came up in the, excuse me? Came up in the responses to many of the questions. When people were talking about the various issues, they would mention community. Some of us came looking for community to be part of this place. Some of us found it when we came for spiritual learning or social action or Sunday school for our children. As one person said, we create this community. It was not given from above. Many comments about communication fell under one of 5 sub-themes. The first was belonging, finding a home, a source of friends, a safe, welcoming space. About half of the responses said something like that. And 2 quotes in that direction. This place is a haven from the pain and discord in the world. It is a place to go for me and my family. It gives a sense of belonging, a club I want to be a member of. The second sub-theme is characteristics of our people and relationships. Many suggested that people are kind, friendly, thoughtful, sincere, intelligent, and that they have diverse backgrounds and skills. The third one says that many mentioned connections not through, or that were met when they were joined in activities. And that is something that is in a separate theme that Rob will talk more about, that being involved in activities led to connections. The fourth sub-theme was respectful communications, and 2 quotes are, there is a freedom to be ourselves with our beliefs. I feel cared about and respected. People in the congregation need to be heard and to feel that they've been heard. The final sub-theme was membership and a desire for growth and diversity. 2 quotes in that area. My hope is that our ministry will reflect the diversity of Vancouver. And I think the use of the word as ministry means our minister and all of the ministry that we do. The second quote was, and this may sound familiar, we would be wise to remove the word church from our theme.
So here are a few quotes that reflect the depth and variety of how we appreciate our ministers. There we go. I enjoyed the diversity of the sermons from Laura and Stephen. I admired Stephen's freewheeling sermons on whatever he felt like talking about or had just read about, like beavers or forests or trees. The sermons were so thought-provoking. Sometimes his sermons, combined with the choir in the sanctuary, took worship to another level of beauty, connection, justice, and appreciation of life. Sermons that don't mention God, I was shocked. I was able to learn something instead of being in resistance about what I was hearing. I felt most appreciative and proud of my church when we got married by Philip Hewitt. So it's clear from these responses that the minister has a very significant impact on people's engagement in this congregation, and they provide some of our most engaged, alive, and motivated times at UCV. And I just want to pick up what's actually in the booklet, but I think it's really a powerful summary where we summarize by saying we value a minister who leads, challenges, and inspires with compassion, who helps us integrate our principles and shared values into our everyday lives, and who walks the talk with us. So it's quite a powerful statement and summary.
Thank you, Rob. The next is the principles and shared values. Remember that this was 2021, so 2 years back. Some people mentioned principles specifically. and they were talking about the 7 principles, and other people stuck to values. So one person said, to me, the most important life-giving characteristic of our UCV is reminding ourselves constantly of our 7 principles and doing what we can do to live out those principles. Another said, I believe the vision and principles of UCV create the conditions for change and growth that contribute to deepening spiritual growth. And these same principles provide for the evolution of the principles with love, compassion, and wisdom. A third succinctly said, I think it's our principles that define us. And for those who focus more on values, one said, I've found people who think as I do, care about where the world is going, reflect my values, and respect children. The church, the people I've met, and the choir have kept me alive. Another said, the acceptance and incorporation of the different ways that human beings can express their spirituality. I was blown away by the respect for earth-based rituals and that social justice actions can be seen as expressions of spirituality. Another said, the most important life-giving force is that UCV is a place of open spiritual inquiry. That is what makes it unique. And lastly, we are at our best when we live and show the rest of the community who and what we are through our actions, such as participating in various marches, using our kitchen to help families in need learn how to prepare and make the best use of food, holding our organic food markets, etc. On the theme of services and ceremonies, again, someone said, I felt most moved with beautiful and meaningful ceremonies, especially funerals and weddings. I'm in the choir, so I have several quotations on the subject of the choir and music. And Rob will point out to you, is itching to point out that many of these responses came from members of the choir. I like the way the music and other elements are integrated. Music, especially the choir, opens my heart. Music at times transports people, brings them into sacred space, brings them together. It's a big part of the worship services. My measure of a great service is that I've laughed and cried and gained new insight into some issue. Another said, sermons oblige me to think outside my normal range of subjects. Somebody young said, somebody quite young, I like how we celebrate everything and I appreciate rituals that help me feel grounded. And on the subject of pageants, seeing children and youth create is like watching a village being created on stage. And lastly, a truly memorable service was when our UCV community had invited a dozen faith leaders from other religious and spiritual traditions, and each contributed a core teaching or insight that highlighted in turn the best aspirations and commonalities of diverse spiritual traditions.
The 5th theme is personal and spiritual growth. These were mentioned by over half of the respondents. Many linked the value of our principles in contributing to growth. An indirect quote was a parent said that it was important for their family to gather with people who have similar values and principles, but different lived experiences. Personal and spiritual growth were found in many activities, education, and services. 2 other quotes referring to this growth. UCV reinforces my faith in people. UCV gives grounding and respite in times of transition or change. Teachers and parents praised our children's religious education. One quote was, our children gained a particular view of the world, a religious foundation that had a rational scientific basis. What you do here and now is what matters. An adult who took a course in creating our own credo was surprised by the varied results within the group. Another who participated in Me and White Supremacy said, it led to deep exploration, so much learning in safe company. an opportunity for the deepest look into my moral soul. And finally, someone who participated in our children's table said, teaching nutrition and cooking with young mothers, the way everyone cooperated, so much fun and laughter. It was joyous.
So the last thing that I'll present here is what we labeled walking the talk, which is basically what it says. And here are some of the things that people said about how we walk the talk in this community. Activism is an important UCV characteristic. Examples are supporting the hotel workers' protest, supporting activism for affordable housing, having a presence at protest marches. We are at our best in our active care for social justice and environmental protection and each other. This community nurtures giving of talent, effort, research, thoughtfulness, and activity toward the best projects. We have a shared purpose toward justice, love, spiritual community, helping each other be the fullest version of ourselves. I have an open heart and a critical mind. I'm not afraid to be vulnerable, ask hard questions, and face difficult truths. I'm passionate about grassroots social justice initiatives and like to get to work on the ground. And finally, UCVers have kept to our values over a long time. So that's the summary of our model.
The ninth, our eighth thought-provoking question invited people to consider 3 wishes for Vancouver Unitarians. So this was 1921. 123 members responded to this. You'll notice the language reflects 2021 when most of the material was gathered. We grouped these wishes as well as we could, and I'm going to go through them in order from the most frequent mentions to the least frequent. I found it interesting to see which of these hopes have been realized already, which are a work in progress, and which we haven't really started on. By far the most common wish for our future in 2021 was to see the congregation grow in numbers, particularly in terms of more diversity in age, ethnicity, economic level, and families. Attached to this was a suggestion that we be more open and welcoming. So about 30% of people mentioned that. Then what we've labeled internal desires, that is what people wanted to see happen within the congregation. People wanted to see our congregation change, grow, and flourish. Mention of UCV as a place of hope, a refuge, a place to debate and explore new perspectives, encourage spirituality, and cultivate leadership. People envisioned connections that extended beyond Sundays to the other days of the week, with more involvement of members, elders, and more emphasis on the arts, more of UCV as community. And a couple of people expressed a wish that we could be less self-righteous. External desires, which is reaching out beyond our campus. People saw our influence extending outward through community outreach. They wanted more environmental, political, and social justice involvement. They hoped for more connection with the CUC and other Unitarian congregations, other faith groups. They mentioned reconciliation with Indigenous peoples. And I imagine more rentals came into that too. Hopes were expressed, well, those were the top categories. And then hopes were expressed for an ideal new minister, a project that was already underway at the time with the Ministerial Search Committee. And we've achieved that. Sunday services. Some people expressed a wish for more variety and diversity. And some were really emphasized the need to continue with the hybrid online along with in-person service. And thanks to Christian and his team, we've done the online as well. The 5 remaining categories were virtually tied. Around sanctuary and campus use, there was a hope to broaden that, again with rentals in part, I think, to serve the community outside our own congregation, bring people in. An equal number of responses asked for better problem solving. better communication, and more harmonious interactions. People expressed a wish for more religious education for all ages, but particularly for adults. There was some, as always, wishing around site development, both for and against. Finance. I found it fascinating that only about 12 respondents mentioned financial sustainability. I was one, and I couldn't believe that more people didn't join me, but I always assume people will agree with me. And finally, which is not on our list, the renaming. It was the least mentioned category. Or was mentioned least often, 3% of the responses. And we've gone through that process and come out the other side. So no longer the Unitarian Church of Vancouver, but Vancouver Unitarians. Rob said that this took an enormous amount of work, and I think he's understating it. But I have to say, I found the work inspiring to read what people really cared about in the community, appreciated and loved. And so often the questions asked for those glowing moments. It's not something I necessarily think about from week to week, but reading through the responses really highlighted that. And it was wonderful to read how people saw Vancouver Unitarians.
My impressions being involved in the process, I would agree. It was really interesting to hear some people directly when we were involved in some of the workshops. And I less than these two, I came on third in our joining the work. But also the reading all of the responses. It was mountains of paper, but if you didn't think about how much was still to read, it was really a gift to see and go, oh, wow, and wipe a tear. And one piece that stood out for me was that how many different reasons people show up here. Large numbers said that they want more diversity of many types. Many people said that. But what I was also noticing is that can be practically challenging, but can also be such a gift when it happens. So I found myself thinking that a lot when people were saying, we need more diversity. And I was thinking, yeah, and boy, that's going to take real focus to achieve it would be such a gift.
So I want to tell you one of the things we did at the last meeting of this team on May 5th, 2022, after we'd submitted our report. We each spoke about the most striking or impressive things we'd learned from this project. What was most memorable? So the three things that I said then that struck me the most and that I'll say again today are that first, the importance for many of us of some fundamental beliefs that find expression here. Second, the strength and importance of our social activism, the many ways in which we take action and also support others to take action. And third, the overarching and multifaceted ways in which our minister contributes to and influences what we experience of value here. I was quite surprised to learn the many ways in which the minister is part of so many people's best memories and experiences here. Today, I add a fourth powerful takeaway from my work on this project, and I think it's stated best by the closing paragraph in the conclusion of our report, so I'll read it. We did not find any surprises in our identity investigations. There's a broad consensus about our defining characteristics, views which are very much in keeping with who we have been since our pioneering members started this congregation in 1909. This finding points to our great strength. We have a strong and clear sense of our identity which has stood the test of time. So this was a very interesting finding because it almost snuck up on us from behind when we were reviewing all of our results and writing our report. We were in some ways almost dismayed that we were not finding any surprises in what people told us or any big differences or disagreements. It felt like it was almost disappointing. Until it dawned on me that there is in fact something very reassuring in discovering that these consistencies in our identity over long periods of time, this connectedness with our past is a powerful foundation for our future. As we say in our hymn, and I think we read it today, I was in the other room, but I heard it, roots hold me close, wings set me free. So I completed this project and this report with a strong sense of connection to and admiration for this community and its richness, and with huge gratefulness that I can be part of it. So the project gave me optimism about this Vancouver Unitarian community and our future. So that completes our presentation. We now have time for questions and answers. You want to describe how we're going to proceed?
Yeah, because we are doing this hybrid as well as our services, there are people online. So Christian will let us know if there's comments coming online. And we did well catching up with some time. This is looking good. We've got maybe 15 minutes or so, and if there aren't questions or comments, that's fine too, but I feel a little bit more like there's some spaciousness for that. So if you have, because again, we are doing the hybrid, if you have a question or a response, if you could come up and use the microphone, and also Leslie will have John will have a traveling mic. Did you know that, John? John was also part of our team, came in as part of the really good help in editing towards the end, which was huge. We had been wallowing things for a long time, and he brought some, when you get somebody flying over and goes, oh, but this and this and this. Yeah, that's great. So anybody, do you have any questions or anything, Christian, from online? So do you want to come on up? That's a good idea. If you could put your hands up if you want to contribute, and online, they can put up their hands. But here, put up your hand if you don't feel comfortable coming up to the mic, and then John will bring you a mic if for mobility reasons or whatever you need to ask from where you are.
Hi, thanks for this. So grateful that you guys have done this incredible foundational work. So I know it was a lot of work and more, so thank you very much. And I guess the interesting thing looking forward to the board retreat for me very personally, not anything to do with the board, is really a consideration of what do we have to offer in our new modern world for people who walk in the door. Who are we? What are we about? What could we tell somebody in an elevator pitch? Not even a pitch, but what it is that we're about. And I know for me personally, the thing that I look for the most is the spiritual growth. I mean, I can join environmental clubs and social justice clubs, and I appreciate that here that's part of people's values and religion and spiritual way of being. But I guess I hunger to study Rumi, and I want to learn about the wisdom from the world's religions. And I'm just wondering if anybody among you can speak to what you heard. If that, it doesn't strike me as that important. And that's one of my takeaways from this. I didn't really hear that a lot of people necessarily are looking for that from this place. And I just would love to know kind of what you heard. Because I think, as you said, everybody comes for very different reasons. And I'm wondering if that came up much. Because I think we're a spiritual place. We talk about being a place of spiritual inquiry.
Yeah, I think there was the summaries we tried to do. We really just picked a few key quotes, but I'm thinking, Leslie, you may want to say something in terms of the services. People mentioned many kinds of services that they appreciate. Do you want to speak to that?
There were lots of responses identifying specific services that people loved. The rituals that we went through, the fire communion and the rest. Stephen, memorable for bringing in many outside spiritual traditions, I mean, outside of us, that got a lot of mention and appreciation from people.
I think it's an interesting question, Catherine, and I'm just looking in the report itself because there's a section that's specifically on personal and spiritual growth. And I don't think that we got a lot of feedback along the lines of what you're saying, which is I want to spend some time to dig into and read about and study other spiritual documents, texts, and kind of ways of thinking and being. The focus was more on the kinds of I guess, spiritual experiences that are available to us here within what we've already got. So with services and ceremonies and so on. So to speak specifically to your question, I don't recall that there was a strong voice for deeper exploration of spiritual beliefs from other different sources.
Except under 3 wishes for the future, there was an interest in more adult religious education. And whether that is in line with what you want, we're interested in, I'm not sure.
Michael?
I had just a comment on Catherine's question and comments, and I was thinking, the question, why do people come here? And Stephen Epperson always emphasized that there's a great diversity of why people come here, for different reasons. But when I think about what actually fills most of the seats, what is it that really sort of attracts people? It was the sermons and our ministers, Stephen, Lara, and Sean. And to me, that a lot of that had to do with the spiritual growth and that spiritual aspect that they sort of put forward in their sermons and in the ceremonies. And so I think that, to answer Catherine's question, what brings people here that is one of the primary reasons, but it's sort of sometimes unspoken or wrapped into other aspects.
Another thing that comes to my mind is, and there's people here. I was just going to say, I do bereavement counseling, and often a huge issue for folks is when you're facing end of life or grieving is thinking what gives meaning to life. And I think there's many ways to add that in, and that'd be interesting to see what comes up in the retreat as well.
I'm just going to interrupt. We have a hand up from Hans.
All right.
Hans, take it away.
Okay, I have just a little tiny issue that's not really connected to any of the others, and it's a simple practical one. I have no issue whatsoever with eliminating church from our name, except for this one little practical thing, which is, what do we call our place now? What we sometimes refer to as our campus. When I'm talking to someone, I'm saying, oh, I got to go to the church to do this, or I got to go to the church, or we're going to the church, or we're going to go to church tomorrow, or whatever. You can't really say we're going to Vancouver Unitarians. I'm going to Vancouver Unitarians to do something. So we need to find some sort of little practical noun that indicates I'm going to the what?
Should we refer that to the board for? I see some nodding in the front row. Thank you. Go ahead. Yeah, Cindy just said that many people are starting to say, I'm going to Van U, or I'll see you at Van U. But clearly there will be lots of room for more conversation, and many of us may have many different answers to that.
Hi, I'm Kara. This is Brian. We've been coming here for about 20 years, and thank you so much. This is amazing, all the work you've done, and everybody who's done it. The thing you were saying about diversity and the work that it would take, has the committee been in touch with other congregations to see what they have done to attract different demographics and things like that? I remember when Stephen Epperson was here, he did talk to us because we were two of the youngest people in the congregation at the time, and I was pregnant and things like that. And he was like, there's a culture that we need to do. He really worked hard to make it more comfortable for the baby to make a noise in the back or whatever, and that was a culture shift, right? But just other things, just age, ethnicity, orientation, everything, all the different categories. What have other congregations done to do that work that was very astute that you did raise that question? So
I think, speaking for myself, that wasn't so much what we were able to do in our role, because our role was to survey people about what they're appreciating. But I know that other groups in our church over the years have talked with people in other congregations. And I think there's definitely room for that, for sure, to continue learning from a variety of people. It wasn't under our mandate just with this process, but it's a good point. Yeah.
We have a hand up from Wendy.
Great.
Wendy, take it away. Wendy, do you?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, just thank you so much to start out with. And I actually did go back to my hard copy of the Rethinking Our identity. And I just was amazed at the number of really beautiful, straightforward, and articulate comments of all of the people. And what a difficult task it was to sort of blend those all together. And you know, it was 33 pages of answers to all of those questions. And it's so good to have this hybrid model, and also to be just able to take this wonderful diversity and vibrant individual pieces of feedback and see it all sort of moving forward. I just think it was a wonderful task, and to come out with the 6 focus areas and work with that is tremendous. So onward. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Wendy. Anyone else have a comment or a question or? Okay. Frank, coming up?
Well, first of all, thanks for a lot of work. I mean, a lot. Just the amount of work you had to put into a phenomenal number of responses and sorting through things and figuring out what spoke to what. I have a pretty good idea of how much work that was, so I want to acknowledge that. Rob wanted a little bit of dissonance, so maybe I can offer some. But hopefully, you know, we take it in a positive way. And that is how one practices one's principles and one's fine ideals is extremely important. And the one thing that I've always found missing and that makes a difference, which is easily overlooked or at least underrated on paper, but in practice makes a real difference. And that is how we work together. If one is committed to community and one wants to recognize diversity, which means hearing voices that often are not heard, then the best way to work is in circles. And what we have here is so classical and so from another era, I guess. We have 3 people who I acknowledge have put a lot of work into things, you know, up on stage, looking down on people who are sitting in rows and can't see each other unless they, you know, get a sore neck by turning around and looking all over the place. You have no idea how much difference working together in circles can actually make. We acknowledge, you know, that we're on the stolen lands, and I use the word stolen deliberately, of Indigenous peoples, but Indigenous peoples have a lot to offer in terms of how they work together. And if Indigenous peoples were doing an exercise like this, they'd be all sitting together in a circle. And that would give opportunity for voices that are otherwise not heard, and it reduces the hierarchy. So the experts become a member of a community. And in fact, everybody together sitting in a circle has a chance to contribute to a community. So it's easily, I notice this happens all the time. Services, of course, you know, this is a tradition that's been with us for, what, 200 years in terms of the way in which Western cultures do things. You have the experts up on stage or up in front or at the pulpit, and you have the people who are receiving the wisdom all sitting in rows in front of them. When I've been to events in the fireside room, same thing. You know, you have often rows of chairs and the experts or the panel are up in front and preaching to the people who are there to receive wisdom. People all have wisdom. And this is especially true if you want to include young people, because young people have a voice, but it's a voice that's not often heard. And it's because the forums that we use for making decisions and for coming together are not really conducive to making community. So while this may seem like a trivial thing, it's just the way in which you organize the seats and so forth and so on, it has a power that goes way beyond that. And all you have to do is to be part of a community. And I do spend a lot of time with Indigenous peoples to realize what a difference this makes And it's something that we just aren't doing.
Mhm.
So that's my dissonance. I offer that with the best of intentions, but it's a real problem as far as I'm concerned.
So,
And that's what I'm talking about.
so thanks, Frank. Oh, so now we're in a circle? So just to respond, I think that Frank, that's excellent input. And I appreciate what you're saying about how changing the configuration of a gathering, the physical configuration changes the nature of the interaction in that gathering. I'm fairly well aware of that. It's not something that came up in terms of an expression of our identity, in the work that we did 2 years ago, but it's certainly, this is just a revisiting kind of what did people tell us 2 years ago, to remind ourselves of what we said from a fairly substantial number of congregants at that time, to revisit that and then to kind of rethink it in light of where we are today and where we want to move to from here. And so I think there is a new opportunity to bring forward those notions about shifting from the traditional top-down approach, if you will, in the way in which we do things, to a much more circular approach. And I'm hoping that that can be part of the discussions moving forward. So it wasn't dissonance, it was a constructive input.
Connie?
I think that Frank's brought up a really good point. And I'm so thankful that the people who have worked so hard on redeveloping the sanctuary have chosen to buy chairs. And that represents an enormous amount of work on behalf of Buildings and Grounds. I'm so thankful for the continuing hard work of the Buildings and Grounds people who saw the many, many hours that they and the surveys that they took and the research that they did. And so now we have the potential for circles because of all their work. And I'm so proud of the church for developing the online program and keeping the online program going so that we have a way of connecting with people who aren't able to come to the church. And I'm really proud of the religious education people who developed the playground, which is really a novel idea for me. And the kind of diversity of people being able to sew and draw and do all those things in a service rather than just sit with their hands clasped tight. I think that we're doing so many things right. And I've been away from the church for about 4 or 5 years. And it's kind of astounding to me to come back and see that the church is still operating in such a healthy way without me. But there is some real depth to the community. And I'm just really proud of the people who've persevered through COVID and through interim ministry and just carrying on. So I just want to express my gratitude for all that.
And for those of you who are wanting to delve into our report in more detail, you'll see there's also a chapter in which we bring up some of the concerns that people had. Our focus was to be appreciative and to get people to be able to say all of the things that were wonderful. But of course, we're human beings to start with, and an ongoing growing community, that people raised concerns as well. And so that has been addressed in one of the chapters. But there was also reason to really try to focus, and we are starting to use more ideas that we're coming up with each other, and through turmoil as well as through happy and growing learning times. Yeah. How are we doing? Yeah. Meja, do you want to come to the, yeah. You don't have to run. We're doing well.
Thank you. Thank you very much for this very big work. We are really benefiting for all the results. as it was very clearly pointed out, the collection of the responses, all that work started in 2021. So it was this talking about the principle is the 7 principles. So the 8th principle came after. So, and I think we all remember the process of working on it and the wording and the different kind of reactions. Some are very strong, very honest, and sometimes it's difficult, right? So, I mean, in the process, we have put together this, first is IBPOC group, and then we have IPA, which is IBPOC plus allies. And I think as a team, we really work very hard, and we have such fantastic support from all the allies. So we are very encouraged. At the same time, I really want to sort of echo what you're Wendy, right? Huh? Carol's. So where do we go from here? I think, I must add that this year I'm wearing this big red jacket, and we're talking about the lunar calendar and the dragon, and I was even invited to talk here. I'm a little blown away because I think it's acceptance showing, and it's interest showing, and I think the energy is there. And I want to thank all of you. And I think just my own thinking, our minister, Sean, is doing a different way. It's just my own thinking, that you are doing a more holistic way. That's how I'm seeing it. You're doing together with us, creating new theology and healthy relation team. So it's really interesting, but I'd like to know a little bit more clearly, what are the procedures? And also I'm so so happy that membership was the #1 concern. And and I wanted to be involved in hoping to do something about it. And I really like to promote that membership increase, diversity, or the quality of it, or in number. We need a whole congregation to work together on this. And it's a multi-year project, I'm quite sure.
Thanks, Meja. Michael, were you wanting to say or no?
Your comment about reading the whole report, and that I believe it's on a member's portal.
It's on the members portal, Rob? Yes, yeah.
And there are links to it in virtually every piece of publicity that's been sent out related to this event. So if you can't find the links to get the report, send me an email, rdano@gmail.com, and say, point me to the report, and I'll gladly do so.
Thank you. Yes, Elizabeth.
Yeah, first of all, I just want to say thank you for all the work that went into that. I was one of the many people that gathered in the circle to put all this feedback together. And it's really wonderful to have that opportunity, and also to know that a lot of your time and effort was put into compiling all that information. So a great big thank you for that. I just want to reflect on just a couple of things. One was just the talk about the sort of rejigging the space in which we gather. And I can remember Stephen Everson saying before he left, he was sort of, we were talking about this, having a new sound system and just how things could move forward. And he was sort of dreaming of the time when we could clear things out and have gatherings, music gatherings, whatever kind of gatherings, but community gatherings. And I remember hearing that from him. And while it wasn't something that happened during his time period with us, it was something that he was envisioning. And I really thought at the time, yes, that is something that would really help this community grow. So when Frank was mentioning the whole thing about gathering in circles, most of the gatherings I've done as an adult have centered more around circle than they have been in rows in community type gatherings. I'm not talking about being at a theater or something, but in community gatherings, they are in circle because people are much more equal. So I'm really looking forward also to more opportunities for joining in circle and keeping that leadership shared and finding ways for people to join in and just bring all of who they are to that so that we can all learn together. And I think the seeds are there for that, but it's just something that we need to work on. In May of last year, so in 2022, after the CIT, the IPA that I'm part of, we did the service. IPA was one of the groups that volunteered to do a service. So one of the things that we looked at was another way of, and the way we phrased it was another way of doing church. And what we were looking at was how to take things away from the rows. And so we did a lot of work just to find out, and thank you, Christian, for your help that day in just the physical removal of chairs so we could put them into more of a circle. And we managed a semicircle. It went like that. But we still had an up area, but we had people speaking down here, not from the pulpit. And that gave a very different feel. And so one of the learnings that we had coming out of that was finding ways to move the chairs quickly and easily without breaking anybody's back. They're beautiful chairs, but they are heavy. And it's not like having, just frame chairs, which other sort of church settings, there's that word again, church. There's settings where they've taken out pews, but they have really light, metal frame chairs. So these chairs are very beautiful, very comfortable, but they're also heavy. So we need to work, I think, together on just kind of creating a way to move the chairs around in a way that's safe and also easy to do. And I'm not suggesting that I have the absolute answer to that by any means, but it's something I think for us to be thinking about. But the more we can get into a semicircle, I think the better that will be, and then maybe into full circle. But it is part of the process, I think, of working to be in just a really wonderful community that I think we all feel like we are part of and just want to grow and flourish in. Thank you.
So for Mary, I think we're moving towards what you're going to be doing in your retreat, but I think we've probably got time for one more person. I'm happy to have you come up and speak, and then we'll have a closing.
Thanks. Thank you so much for all of the work. I came to this congregation around 2021, so still quite new. I was involved with other congregations before and a lot of online. I was involved with a lot of other congregations before and online like Unitarian Council stuff for a few years. I really appreciate the work. I'll say again so folks can hear me with the mic. One of the things that I think I'd love to see is the list of things that people want to see continue, like the list of ongoing activities and like ways to express the principles and the values. Because I've found in conversations here, a lot of the time, there's a lot of arguments around things that don't actually mean activities or don't actually mean physical embodiments of things. And I'd love to see this next discussion be about, well, what does our congregational life look like and who's committed to which parts of it and who's committed to parts existing that are not necessarily for them, but that they're willing to serve and support. So I'd love to know that, because I think that really impacts, where I dedicate my efforts. Like I know when I've committed to something, it's often because just one or two people have said to me, I really want this thing to exist. And, I've helped run things like Soul Matters for the youngerish groups and things like that when I know there's a few people who want to do it. And same with some of the intergenerational stuff, because I think there's this feeling of always scrambling for permanent volunteers or committee members or, you know, folks to do stuff. Whereas I think if we can figure out what folks want done, then there's an outreach. And I had mentioned that there's a few membership discussions, and, you know, I'm often pulled into like, what do folks under 50 want discussions, and a lot of it's to know what keeps the folks over 50 here. Like, a lot of folks have left and a lot of folks have changed their involvement, and like, I come because of what already is here, not because of something I could have created elsewhere. So how do I know what folks want to continue and why, what they've done before, and would, like, you know, like, I'd be happy to volunteer for groups to help with like their setup and food for a thing I'm not attending, because I don't necessarily want to be paying attention, then I can do the food. Whereas the things I go to, I don't want to do the food, I want to pay attention. So like, how can we sort of enable each other to do those things? And know what's valuable, that I don't know what happened 20 years ago. I don't know what happened 10 years ago or 3 years ago. How do I know what folks are committed to and would be committed to again? And I think that would be really, really great for me to find out. I did try and read the report. It is really long, which is great. It's a lot of work. But I think pulling out the ongoing activities parts and even asking folks, and I mentioned that to Derek too, about could we have conversations or another survey on what do people want next year and the year after, wish lists kind of. As an
I
option.
hope that
Thanks.
the board has been making some notes. You raised many, many points. I think it'd be great for that ongoing conversation. Thank you so much. And are we calling them?
I'm just going to interrupt and read it. I've got a couple of comments in Zoom, if I could read those out. There's a comment from a little bit earlier during the discussion about the circles. I think it was in response to Frank's feedback, where Wendy said that in talking about the circular layout, she says it has a lot to say about ritual circles and loose leadership groups. And then a little bit later, when Meja was speaking, Juliet wrote a response that said, I really appreciate the reminder of how the 8th principle process also revealed important parts of our congregational identity, especially, though it happened separately from this. And that's the feedback from Zoom.
And just before Sean gives our closing words, just a little summation from the board's point of view. And to go back to our original theme, who are we? Where do we come from? And where are we going? Brian?
Yeah, Michael asked me to jump in here, and in the interest of everybody participating, please sing along. I think you know it. Where do we come from? What are we? Where are we going? Where do we come from? What are we? Where are we going? Very nice. It goes on and on. But
And I would like to thank the panel, even and the other 2 members, the 5 members of the Congregational Identity Report Task Force, Leslie, Rob, Mark, John, and Naomi, and Meja for her introduction. And just in terms of a few things that were mentioned, that this is preparation for the congregational retreat in March 9th. And going back to a few of the comments, one of Frank's comment is hearing everybody's voices, and that's the reason for having the congregational retreat in March 9th, is to hear everyone's voices. That the board is a strategic board, but we are just members of the congregation, and we want to know, where are we going? We want to know from the congregation where they want to go. What do they want to be happening in the future? And this was also, Carol mentioned, where do we go from here? Zinnia, Alexis mentioned a list of things to see. And then also, I forget who mentioned it, but so keeping the leadership shared. And that's something that we really are wanting to emphasize, and the reason for the congregational treat is keeping that leadership shared and getting input from the congregation. And also a reminder that there is another forum in 2 weeks on February 25th. And I will frame that one as positive lessons from challenges we have faced and positive lessons going forward from the challenges we have faced.
Thanks, Michael. So we're all done except for closing words, right? Okay. I do want to add my thanks. It was a great resource to me, being a candidate for the congregation, to have this report to read. I felt like I was able to come to know a lot about what matters to you. So that was a very helpful thing. So I'm thankful to the team and for the congregation for being so forthcoming in ways that really mattered. So thank you for that. I'm going to leave us with words from Margaret Wheatley. These are words you've probably already heard from me. You will hear them again, I promise. I will stop reading them when we don't need them anymore. It's called Turning to One Another. There is no power greater than a community discovering what it cares about. Ask what's possible, not what's wrong. Keep asking. Notice what you care about. Assume that many others share your dreams. Be brave enough to start a conversation that matters. Talk to people you know. Talk to people you don't know. Talk to people you never talk to. Be intrigued by the differences you hear. Expect to be surprised. Treasure curiosity more than certainty. Invite in everybody who cares to work on what's possible. Maybe incite them too. Who knows what could happen? Acknowledge that everyone is an expert about something. Know that creative solutions come from new connections. Remember, you don't fear people whose story you know. Real listening always brings people closer together. Trust that meaningful conversations can change our world. Rely on human goodness and stay together.
Finishing 5 minutes early.
And apparently someone else has rented the space starting at 2. So if you'd appreciate mixing and milling, we can maybe do that and kind of move towards the back. It's not about a few minutes to do that, but someone else apparently is coming in at 2. Yeah.